Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 116. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Wednesday, Steelers Nation Day, 8 days.
Wait a minute. Hold on. What's that? What the hell? That's Graham Barton's music.
Oh, my God. Very WWE of you. WrestleMania's over, Dave.
Uh-oh. Wait a minute. That's Graham Barton's music. That's a good way to interrupt the intro of the show here.
Perfect.
Because look, we're going to be talking about some pre-draft visitors today. The last show that we had. Should I let you finish out your intro or no?
I mean, we're already off the rails to begin with. 8 days until the draft, but Graham Barton coming in for a visit. We'll talk pre-draft visitors today. That is going to be certainly the theme of this episode.
I didn't make a good enough glass breaking sound, but yeah, I think we should probably start there with because we had the show on that we recorded Sunday night for Monday, and obviously we didn't have the Monday pre-draft visitors, so we'll start there with all the 4 names we got to go over.
4, and most of them are offensive linemen, a theme of the Steelers' draft focus. 3 of the 4 are in Troy Fautanu from Washington. We knew he was going to come in at some point, but officially came in on Monday. So he has 6 visits pre-draft with the 32 teams this year. So certainly a name in demand. Mason McCormick from South Dakota State, a later round guy, athletic, primarily played a lot of guard in his career. Some wonder if he could play center as well. And so that's maybe more, early day 3, maybe 4th round-ish type of candidate in Mason McCormick. But of course, the big name there in Graham Barton from Duke coming in yesterday, a big box room to check, been waiting for that visit to actually occur. And then the oddball, Payton Wilson, the inside linebacker from NC State, athletic, probably the most talented and best tape of any off-ball linebacker in this year's class. The big question with Payton Wilson has been medical and health, injured habitually early in his career. He's been healthy the last 2 seasons, but his first couple of years were an adventure to stay on the field. So those are the names we're working with, and we'll see if Pittsburgh finishes things up today or tomorrow.
All right, we'll start with Troy Fautanu, a guy we've had obviously quite a few discussions about throughout this pre-draft process, and I think when you look at the biggest issue, I think when it comes to him, now he's got the arm length, but he doesn't have the overall height. And he takes exception to the fact that he's going to have to kick inside the either guard and center, and kind of even says what does he say? It's irresponsible, crazy talk, or
lazy analysis.
Okay, lazy analysis. All right, call it whatever you want to call it. But historically, we had Ross try to go through and pull up all of this on True Media and all. What did we find as far as true tackles in the NFL under 6'4"?
There aren't many. The last one, as we mentioned a while back, was Isaiah Wynn in terms of first-round guys. The data maybe feels a bit incomplete because it wasn't showing Peter Skoronski, although he kicked to guard. So I'm not 100% sure of the variables and inputs and outputs. But point is, it doesn't happen often, although I think odds are Fautanu will be a first-round pick. The question is just really where he'll go and where he'll play ultimately at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that he's likely to be a first round pick. But I think even didn't Dane Brugler have him listed as his top guard? It just, to me, that's the way it's felt like it might end up going with him. Regardless of whether or not you think of him as a tackle or guard. I think he goes in the first round. I think the potential of him going off the board in the first 20 picks is also a possibility there. Now, could you, because teams might not have him as a tackle, could that push him down into the later portions of the first round? I think that's possible. with him as well too. But I think the main takeaway here is that he is a first rounder. It's just a matter of where people, where that one team's going to take him. Personally, I think teams should be looking at him as a guard. I understand why the Steelers brought him in, because there has been some of that discussion of, hey, is this guy a potential center convert in addition to guard? So that's where the discussion is on him.
Yeah, I think for Pittsburgh, we had the discussion. I'd asked you if they were to draft Fautanu, where would they play him? Because while I think you could make the easy case to kick inside the guard, like many undersized tackles, Pittsburgh does not have the need there. So is it a right tackle thing? Is it a keep you at left tackle and Jones at right tackle? That doesn't seem likely given their intent and desire to move Broderick Jones over. So that one's always kind of thrown me for a bit of a loop. I do appreciate, though, that Fautanu said, hey, I'm a tackle, because most guys give the standard cliche, which is fine. I'll play anywhere a team wants me to play. And he says, no, I am a tackle. Anyone who says I'm an inside guy, it's lazy analysis. Will that ultimately hold true? And if a team drafts him and says, hey, you're a guard, he's going to say, yes, sir. And he'll move inside and do the best he can. But I appreciate him giving an honest answer and saying, I am an offensive tackle. I can play tackle at a really high level. Let me ask you this, Dave. What measurable gives you more concern, just kind of big picture, in terms of their ability to project at tackle? Troy Fautanu's lack of height at being 6'3", or Talise Fuaga's lack of length at, I think, 33.5 inches. He's taller, but shorter lengthwise than Fautanu.
Yes.
You got to pick one. Come on, Dave. I'll go Fuaga on the length. I think length matters more than the height does.
Look, I mean, the longer your arms are, the more fighting chance you have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and height does matter, but typically the height matters because it generally correlates to length. If you're shorter, often you're not as long as the guy that's 6'5".
Right. Give me the guy with the longer arms every day of the week.
So I wonder where Fuaga is going to go, because those are two guys projected to be off the board by 20, but people also wondering, are they going to be guard types? And then you throw in Graham Barton, who's a tackle that's likely to kick inside. So you got three tackles in this class, and a strong tackle class, that people wonder where their NFL home will be.
Fautanu only played 2 games in college at left guard. I can't imagine that was many snaps in total when it comes to there. So at least you do have a little bit of tape if you are going to project them inside there. I think he's a guard. So you could obviously draft him with the idea that you're going to give him a chance at tackle and see how that goes. But I think at worst case scenario, you got a pretty damn good guard there.
But the question is, if Pittsburgh were to draft him, where do they intend on playing him? Because it would not be a guard.
Center.
Yeah, has he even worked there ever, even in the pre-draft process?
I'm not seeing anything. So, but look, and this all parlays into Graham Barton finally coming in here. If you're going to project guys like this who primarily played tackle at the college level, if you're going to project them, because look, I think, and I'll still stand on this for a while until we actually see him play any center in the NFL and how he fares. I still think the best position for Graham Barton in the NFL is guard. Now, that he did not play any guard in college, so if I'm going to project him as a guard conversion in the NFL, then it's only fair to say, well, why can't he be a center conversion as well? Because you've got you've actually got 400 snaps to go on at center, albeit him at 18 years old back in 2020. At least you have that to hang your hat on, where you really don't have anything at guard on him. And really the same with Troy Fautanu as well too. I mean, if I'm going to sit here and say, well, I feel like you can project him, as a guard at the NFL. Well, because of the lack of snaps, and because and it's an interior position, and you're still inside a phone booth anyway, then you have to project him as potentially. Can he do it at center as well too?
Sure. I mean, listen, I think your point about Barton moving to guard is valid. I don't understand why it's not being at least discussed enough by the national media, and that could lend itself to teams ahead of Pittsburgh. The Bengals I've mentioned, if they're looking for guard help, to potentially be an option to take Barton, and that's why the guard conversation is notable. But my point is, for Pittsburgh, if they draft him, he's a center, and so that's where I really put my time and energy on, because he's not going to move to guard. Obviously, we all understand that for Pittsburgh, and so the question is just how well can he project back inside to center.
Right, and Fautanu the same thing though. I mean, if he was to be the pick, he's more than likely they're going to move him to center, right?
Well, you think we said right tackle? Would he go to right tackle? I don't know. I don't know what you do with him. I think that'd be kind of a curious pick from that aspect. I'd be really interested in seeing where they would move him. I think potentially he would try to go to right tackle.
Why couldn't Barton be your right tackle? Because
length.
Of the arms?
Yeah, length is. If Barton had 34-inch arms, he's a tackle, and that's really the big reason why people view him as an interior guy.
All right, but I mean that's do you think Fautanu goes off the board in the first 19 picks?
The projections say he will. Given the NFL interest, I'll say yes. But I do wonder if both Fuaga and Fautanu and Barton are all going to be gone by 20. I feel like somebody's going to fall because there's going to be some devaluing of them potentially being an interior piece.
I think the ESPN Analytics Draft Day predictor, which is just that, it works off of best player rank and Kuiper's mock and Jordan Reed's mock and I guess some simulators that are run on the site. They have him going 18th overall to the Bengals as the highest probability. Then they have him going, even a probability at 19th overall to the Rams. And the last thing the Rams need is a guard.
Yeah. What else? What do they have opposite? They have Dotson. They moved Avila to center, right?
Yeah, so. They signed that other guard to big money over there as well too.
Right.
So and Avila is definitely going to center. So their interior, the Rams, is sewn up. So I don't know why this predictor, you would think the predictor, I mean, I understand it's a bar graph and all like that, but why is 19th overall the second highest unless they truly
tackle.
think that he's going to play tackle with them,
Yeah, that could be their evaluation. Not sure.
But even so, they don't even have, when it looks at needs here on when you highlight the pick for the Rams in order, they had defensive tackle, cornerback, outside linebacker, defensive end. So they don't even have tackle on there. Now, obviously, the Steelers are at 20 and assuming he makes it that far, would probably be the next predicted landing spot for him. I've wondered all along when it comes to Fautanu. I've never given much thought to him really ending up being the Steelers pick, to be honest with you. Number two, I have kind of wondered how this link will impact him and if it winds up with him getting pushed past 20 overall.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And again, I think somebody there will slip because, again, there's some other really strong tackles in this class that we know will almost certainly be gone by the time 20 rolls around. Joe OL Fautanu may slide a bit based on where projections had him early in the pre-draft process, but he should still be long gone by 20. You'd think J.C. Latham will be gone by then too. So there's 3 tackles, and you throw in all the receivers that'll be gone and quarterbacks that'll be gone, etc. Someone will get pushed down. But yeah, I'm with you on Fautanu. My big question is, okay, you draft him, fine. Would you play him? And I don't have a confident answer in that because it's not guard. Center is a total unknown. Right tackle will be flipping him to a new position, and left tackle means that Broderick Jones does not move over, which Pittsburgh does not have an appetite to do, and rightfully so. So that one has always been a strange fit to me.
If you're into the over-under draft positions, which I love looking at every year, I absolutely, especially living in Las Vegas, I love this time of year when the over-under on draft positions come out. And if it were up to me, they'd release 200 of them at a time to let you bet on the 5th rounders and the 6th rounders and all like that. But gambling addictions aside, Troy Fautanu, they have an over-under of 16.5 on, with the, I think, actual favorite being the under.
So that would mean he would go before
16.
Okay.
Or before 17, basically.
Before 17.
Or no, wait. Yeah, it'd be before 17, right?
Okay, so the projection is that's his over-under, but likely to be taken off the board ahead of that, then falling a bit. So yeah, again, that tracks with the projections. I really want to watch the Bengals and what they do. They got a bunch of needs. They could go D tackle for sure, but they could also go left guard, even a center type. I think to potentially take away one of Pittsburgh's targets or somebody at least they've done homework on.
Okay, I still contend that Brock Bowers would look good in Bengals. Well, I mean, not good to some fans. I've always kind of wondered if that might be where he's going.
Yeah,
what do they have at tight end?
Not much, I don't think at this point. Who emerged last year? Who scored the touchdown against Pittsburgh on that screen? I think he had made some plays for them. The question is, will Bowers, make it that far? Some rumors about the Jets. I think even the Bears potentially. So, I mean, again, all possible, all on the table, but he may not be there. Bowers would be at 18.
All right. Well, needless to say, I think Fautanu has been an interesting discussion. How surprised would you be if he fell out of the first round completely into the top of the second round?
I'd be pretty surprised.
Okay. All right. He's just going to be, he's one of those guys that because of the measurables, you kind of wonder.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk Graham Barton. And we had discussed Pittsburgh showing interest in Jackson Powers Johnson, brought him in for a visit, brought Zach Frazier in for a visit, although he's a local visit, technically being from West Virginia, one of Pittsburgh's local schools they can draw from. But finally, on Tuesday, Graham Barton in for a visit, a big box to check. We know, Dave, even if the Tomlin Khan / GM pro day streak ends, their first round pick has to be somebody that comes in for a visit. And they've done a ton of homework on potential first round guys. They want to have that extended sit down, get to know you type of meeting than just a formal conversation 18 minutes at the combine. So for Barton to come in is to me a massive box to check.
What's that meme, that picture that everybody puts up on Twitter with the guy sitting up in his chair and leaning forward?
The video game, playing the video games. Yeah. That was us once we saw the Barton had come in.
Yeah, your chair comes forward and you're leaning over. It got your interest now. Look, that's massive, especially if you're going to go against, if you want any chance of going against the Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, Blues Clues, year to break the cycle. Up until him coming in, it felt like there was only a couple of West Coast offensive linemen that could potentially break that. Now you squarely have to put Graham Barton on that list as well. So the thing, you try to work around, why potentially Khan and Tomlin were not at that pro day. If memory serves me, it was the Monday or Tuesday after, or at least a day or two after the league meetings had ended down in Florida. You could also just go with the excuse that as Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert, even when he was here, always used to say, we like to go where we see the most amount of prospects possible. And then if you want to build in your own fixed narrative within all that, or your own justifications, you say that it just ended up being, when you have that many top tier grade A Power 5 prospects in 7 or 8 different pro day locations that they go to like that, odds are going to be extremely high that you're going to end up drafting a player in the first round out of the group of those players. So, I mean, that's how you build that out, I think. And then you take into account that Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin only went to 4 pro days in total this year. How many true first rounders were technically in that group? What is the immediate team needs? And, you build all that out. So I think the end result here is, look, up until yesterday, I don't think you could have put Graham Barton. You had to have a very good reason to have, outside of the obvious, to have Graham Barton as your pick at 20th overall. With him coming in and that box at least checked there now, you have a good reason to put him in there.
You're a lot more confident in saying, okay, this guy legitimately could be the Steelers pick and potentially maybe the favorite to be the pick. Will he be their selection? Who knows? Again, the draft is so complicated and unpredictable, and all it takes is the Bengals at 18 or some other team snatching him a pick or two ahead, and all of a sudden he's not even available to be drafted, of course. But a huge box to check, and should mention, although we understand the strength and the value of Tomlin Kahn being there, Arthur Smith was at that pro day, and that's important to send the OC, former offensive lineman, a guy that obviously you like a lot, for hiring him, your first outside hire of a coordinator in a decade. And so, it's not like they sent just an area scout to go watch Graham Barton. And so I think that's worth mentioning as well. So you combine that with the pre-draft visit, because Broderick Jones came in for a visit last year. I mean, maybe Pittsburgh is valuing the pre-draft visit for the first round pick more under Omar Khan, because in the past it was like 50-50. Some of the first round picks would come in, some of them they would just go to the pro day, have the dinner, and that would be their main meeting. Last year with Jones, they were both at the Georgia pro day and brought Jones in for a visit. And there's a benefit to a guy coming to your facility. He can get to know the facility more and know the area a bit more. He gets to meet more people. When you're at the pro day, you can only meet with the people you send. When he comes in, you can meet with, I assume, strength and conditioning coaches. You can get him on the board. You can kind of sit down and watch tape together. Just kind of meet probably more touchstones of your organization than you could when you go to him at his workout. So there's certainly benefits to bringing those guys in for pre-draft visits. So again, big box to check overall for Graham Barton.
If you got Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Kevin Colbert all in a room together and started asking them about how all this lines up over the years and how them Depot boys waste a lot of time looking at who goes.
I wouldn't call it a waste.
Who goes where? Who shows up in this 1/18th of a second of a clip in a North Carolina sports news segment on the local news. Here's the thing. They obviously have gone to fewer. I think they would chalk it up to the pro day thing being, well, hey, we go to 7, 8, 9, 10 pro days. And like I said, the blue chippers are there. The odds are that you're talking about, you're increasing the odds greatly that one of the guys are going to come out of there. Now, the whole West Coast thing and all like that. I mean, they went out and saw David DeCastro, right?
Colbert did, yeah. Don't think Tomlin was there.
So I mean, that's West, and could you pawn the whole Ziggy Hood thing off to, well, they picked late in the first round and the board didn't break exactly how they like and all like that. And then you fast forward to this year, they've only been to 4 pro days, and good chance that we're the cross section of need versus want and positional needs just does not intersect with maybe some of those guys where they were at the pro days at. But rest assured, it would have been hard to justify Graham Barton, as a potential 20th overall or trade down situation, however it plays out, had he not come in. So pro day visits, especially, look, because he didn't take part in I think we determined that he did not even go to Mobile, right?
That's my understanding. The injury, he initially accepted the invite, but I don't believe actually even went there in any capacity because of the injury that he had suffered.
Then that leaves the only really time that you've talking to him is probably some during the season when you're whoever you had scouting them at some games, probably had some conversations there. Obviously at the combine, you talked to him, and why wouldn't you if you missed him at the Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah, they had a formal with Graham Barton. We know that.
And then you obviously bring him in for a pre-draft visit. So Basically, I mean, the takeaway here is this is a significant visit late in the pre-draft process.
It is. Let me ask you this, Dave. And it's kind of a big question, I know, but is Graham Barton the front runner, the favorite to be the Steelers pick at number 20?
I think he's one of three guys. I think he's one of three guys. I think it's Mims. I think it's him, and I think it's potentially Jackson Powers Johnson.
Okay, you still put Powers Johnson in that category.
I mean, I think I don't see how you can't. I mean, I know there's some people saying that he could potentially fall out of the first round, and maybe he is the guy that falls out of the first round of the center push down. You know, maybe we do see, but now you have reports coming up that there's no way that. Well, that might be a little strong. You've got, I think just a couple people saying that teams won't, there's a couple of teams at the end of the first round that won't let Zach Frazier fall out of the first round. And that the reason Jackson Powers might be going out of the first round, falling out of the first round is some of the injury concerns that he's had, concussions and also limited snap, less than 1,000 snaps. Actually, 1 year starter at Oregon. Basically there, but I still consider him a possibility because look, if you're considering Graham Barton a possibility because he came in, then you have to give that same courtesy to any potential first round guy that came in. Really.
Sure. Just now you have to pick, who's kind of on the podium, your top three, because there's a bunch of first round guys they brought in who could be the pick, whether it's Fautanu, whether it's Fuaga, A.D. Mitchell, the receiver from Texas, the interior guys, Zach Frazier you could throw in there as well. I'll still stand by my opinion that the order in which the top three centers go and exactly where they'll go in the draft is harder to determine. But I'll say it's Graham Barton is the first one off the board, followed by Zach Frazier, and Powers Johnson will be third in that group in terms of where they get drafted.
Yeah, I think Frazier's third personally, and nothing has changed that in my mind just yet. But I'll tell you, I'll still stand by the fact I think that if Graham Barton comes off the board before 20, I think it's a team that's got him as a guard. Now here's the thing, and we had a few questions about this in our live stream the other night, Monday night. The Steelers should have their shot at any one of those three, however they have those centers ranked. To me, it feels like the messiness with the center positions starting to come off the board begins with, what did I say, the was it Cowboys, Packers, Buccaneers, right in that order? Yeah,
that 24 through 26 gets pretty potentially center heavy needy.
Right. That's to me where if now you contend that the Bengals, could potentially be in that mix. I think if the Bengals go Graham Barton, I think to me it might be because of guard.
Yeah, I mean certainly, but my point is whether they view him as a center or guard doesn't matter. He's off the board, and that's the question: is Barton going to be there? And the Bengals are a team that may be taking him.
Yeah, have they brought him in? Do we even have a built out list of? Does CBS Sport? What does CBS Sports have on? And look, and we just got to clarify here again. We're working off other people's lists that we have not compiled. We have great confidence in our list of what we've compiled and coaches and all like that because we compile it. When you're at the mercy of other sources, you have to. Have some level of trust and some level of questioning it as well.
Yeah.
Are you seeing anything?
Yeah. From what I'm able to tell, I'm not seeing Barton on a pre-draft visit list. They do seem to be looking at more tackles than interior guys.
And that makes sense because of the right tackle situation.
Yeah, well, they did sign Trent Brown, but I mean that's probably more of a shorter term play than it is a longer term.
I looked at that contract the other day, and it's it's like $3 to $4 million, I think. So you're not if you drafted an upgrade, you could definitely consider him a backup.
Yeah, so I think again, don't want to say they definitely would take Barton or anything. Certainly not saying that. Mims, I think, could be definitely a guy because they love that size of tackle with Orlando Brown, and Trent Brown's a huge dude too. So. Mims could end up being their pick, but I think point is I'm watching offensive line in general for the Bengals and who they may take may help shake the board for Pittsburgh at 20.
Right. I feel pretty good overall that if the Steelers wanted to take a center at 20th overall, they'll have the pick of the litter.
Okay. And you're saying essentially the Barton, Powers, Johnson, Frazier, you expect all to be there at number 20?
I do.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. And that's certainly, I mean, I think certainly Frazier will be there. I certainly think Powers, Johnson will be there. I think odds are Barton would be there, but if there is somebody that may get, taken, it would be him.
Right.
All right.
It looks like, the Bengals brought in, as far as tackles go, Mims, Fuaga, Fautanu.
Although you wonder if they could do one of those guys as an inside guy because you think Fautanu is probably going to go to guard.
Right. So, and we don't have the built out all 30 names of them either. So
true. All right, Dave. So that's the story on Graham Barton. I mean, we've talked about him a ton, but it is important given the positional value. And I think center is the most interesting position to watch in terms of how Pittsburgh approaches things throughout the draft. Do they take one early? Do they take one round one? If they wait, do they hope somebody falls in round two? Do they try to trade up, round two? Do they go with some sort of other plan of a third, fourth round option? That's what I really want to watch and why we're dedicating so much time to it. The outlier guy that came in was Payton Wilson from NC State, and just kind of mentioned him briefly earlier. The first and potentially only inside linebacker that'll be brought in for a pre-draft 30 visit with the Steelers. Again, really athletic, ran 4.43. I think talent-wise, pound for pound, the best off-ball linebacker in this class. The medicals have always been the concern with Payton Wilson.
Yeah, they have, but boy, he sure can move on tape. He's a little bit taller as well. And he detailed all those at the Senior Bowl and how he's trying to prove that the injury concerns won't be there. I mean that's the battle, and he's a little bit older too, isn't he?
I'll have to check his age. He might be with some of the injuries. I'm sure he got in a medical red shirt somewhere along the way. He's 20, about to turn 24, actually. So right. Yes, he's an older prospect. Right.
So, look, I mean, when he's on the field and he's playing at his best, he really sticks out. He's got some speed still, but you do wonder about the medical history and the age and all like that with him. I mean, somebody's going to get him in the middle rounds there. Somebody's going to have to pull him off the board at that point. But do you worry about him who was the Cowboys linebacker that had the neck issue just recently that had to retire?
Leighton Vander Esch.
Right. Now he obviously ended up going much earlier. In
Pittsburgh
draft.
Looked at him. They brought in interest in him coming out of Boise State.
And he was another, he's 6'4"?
He's a bigger guy, kind of. I don't know his exact size, but certainly a more old school looking linebacker.
Yeah, I kind of when I think of Payton Wilson, I kind of, even though it's a different kind of I think issues here. I think Wilson's more with his lower but below the belt. But I kind of you kind of wonder about those guys and the risk involved with the previous injuries and the age and all like that.
Right. Yeah. I think Wilson will be an early day 2 guy, maybe top 50 type of prospect there. So don't see him exactly in Pittsburgh's range. I do think they will draft inside linebacker given how active Aaron Curry was on the pro day trail. But I think you're looking at more 3rd, 4th round, maybe a Cedric Gray from North Carolina, maybe Wallace from Kentucky, although I think his profile may have him go a bit earlier than where Pittsburgh's head is at. It could be one of those Ohio State guys, Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, or maybe somebody they haven't even, publicly shown interest in.
Look, we build out this 30 visitor list every year, and you try to draft. Here's what I always try to do. You look at the needs, obviously, and you look at how they built out predominantly the 30 visits positionally, and you look at guys that went to the. You no longer have that 3rd All-Star game, right? The NFL PA Bowl. So you look at the Shrine and you look at the Senior Bowl guys. If the player was eligible to go to those, or at least invited to those, that plays heavy into your decision making. But inevitably, players not on the visit list, 1 or 2 or 3 of them end up being Steelers, right?
Sure. I mean, just largely speaking, you could sit there and assume that half of the Steelers picks will be the pre-draft visitors and half won't.
Right.
And maybe even half is generous, maybe one or two. I think last year there were, three visitors that had come in, or four, actually four. It was Washington, Jones, Benton, and Porter, although Porter was a local visit being from the Pittsburgh area. So that was on the heavier end of things. We'll see if that holds under Omar Khan's second draft. But yeah, usually, just again, very broadly speaking, half the list will half their picks will be from the list, and half will, of course, not.
All right, how many confirmed? Because there was always the Penix and a couple of these guys that they've got visits scheduled, and they came from kind of outlier sources, if you will, within there. Where are we at right now with the official visitor list? And I would assume, is it today or tomorrow is the final day?
I think it's just this week. I don't know if there's a particular day on the cutoff, but this is the final week for visitors to come in.
Okay.
So in terms of where they're at, it's a little tricky. What I'll say is, of the ones that are 100% confirmed and the ones that typically they've been beat writers or the occasional national reporter to say the guy had already come in a while back. That includes names like Amarius Mims, which we don't know the date on that, but I think it was Fittipaldo said that Mims did come in for a visit at some unspecified time a little while back. Same with Darius Robinson, the D lineman from Missouri. And there's been that one passing mention of Ladd McConkey from The Athletic. That's the only time it's even been referenced. But if we assume those things are true, then we're at 28 known confirmed visits. So 3 guys that were reported that were going to happen sometime in the future that we don't know if they've even taken place or will take place are Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback from Washington, running back Dylan Johnson, also from Washington, and Sean Stevens, the corner from Ferris State, Joey Porter Jr.'s cousin. Those 3 were reported, but don't have confirmation on them. So obviously not all 3 can come in because he'd be at 31 at that point. My guess is Penix has not come in. He's busy this weekend. He's got Commanders or somebody, I think today even, but we'll have to see on that. But long story short, to use your phrase, in the world he checks back on its way, we're at 28 of 30 visits.
All right. Hopefully, I don't know if we'll get it by the time it'll probably happen 15 minutes after we get off the show, but it'll give us something maybe to talk about on the, what's today? Today's on the Friday show, when it comes to maybe rounding out the list there. And look, Vegas, no surprise when it comes to odds there. The Steelers are heavy betting favorites to take. And I'm ready for your shock face here. Steelers heavy favorites to draft an offensive lineman in the first round. First player drafted for them, offensive lineman.
Yeah, hope you were sitting down for that information. Yeah. Offensive line, certainly the heavy favorite. I think corner might be the next most likely position. They have brought in a couple corners. DeJean could be that kind of wild card sleeper, but I mean, how many offensive linemen have they brought in for visits, excluding local visits? It's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of the 30 potential, and that does not include Frazier or Goncalves from Pitt because they're local. If you include them, that's 12. I mean, that is a heavy section of your list.
And wide receiver is second, at least on the odds from FanDuel a couple of days ago, had the second best odds. If they went that way, does it feel like it'd be a trade up or something?
I wouldn't get that suspicion because you're trading up probably for like a Dunze, and that's a pretty heavy trade. They'd probably go up 10 picks or so to do that.
I'm thinking, a total hypothetical here.
I think they'd probably stay if they loved an A.D. Mitchell from Texas and felt like they could round out the edges in his game and help him mature. Then that's kind of where I think it would go.
Okay. It's interesting though that they do have wide receivers as second, as far as betting favorites go.
Yeah, and Peter Schrager in his mock draft, which is kind of more or less sourced from what he's hearing, and I don't know how much he's hearing from Pittsburgh versus Buffalo versus Chicago in terms of how good his intel is for every team, but he had Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, and now there's not been a lot of public interest in Brian Thomas. They had Weidl at the Pro Day, which was notable, but no Tomlin, Khan, no Zach Azzani, and to our knowledge, no pre-draft visit with Brian Thomas Jr.
I'll be shocked if it's not an offensive lineman. I think I speak for you within that.
Yeah, I think it's certainly the heavy favorite overall. All right, Dave, kind of switching gears to a different portion of the draft. We mentioned on Monday, which was recorded Sunday night, our Steelers, what they look for study, looking at the offensive tackles and the names who fit there, and Blake Fisher kind of really sticking out. I've been working through each day, posting a new position of what they look for to get those done before the draft kicks off next Thursday. I moved to wide receiver next, given that people really wanted to see what receivers in this year's class fit, and given the pretty high confidence that they're going to take a receiver much sooner than later in the draft. And so, based off Steelers benchmarks, historical data of the Tomlin era, 2 wide receivers checked every single box. And these are guys who were invited to the combine. They are Jordan Whittington from Texas and Ricky Pearsall from Florida. And Pittsburgh brought in Pearsall for a visit. And so, like Fisher, Pearsall's a guy that's really checking the boxes up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and for people that have listened to this show, I really enjoy Ricky Pearsall. I do kind of wonder how quickly he'll come off the board there. Now, once again, this because I cheated way ahead of you, and I took we get those big reports from Draft Scout, those big spreadsheets. So I those have some of the pro day stuff filtered in. So what I did is I went through all the filters and whittled that thing down and came up. Here's the thing that as much as I love this study, I get aggravated now with a lot of these guys not doing everything. Not only at the combine, but now at their pro days as well too. Let's face it, one of the joys that we have or have had in previous years when it comes to combine is trying to fill out that spreadsheet as complete as possible with as many players as possible, because that gives, as part of the early pre-draft process coming out of the All-Star games, because you want the hot spots that you think that you can go to right away to start looking at the tape when it comes to the Steelers. Which guys match up at least from it used to be, we were talking about Spark, and then it became RAS and building these things out, the boxes checked when it comes to those. It feels like you got fewer and fewer of these guys now doing everything, especially through their pro days, and that messes this stuff up bad. I mean, without a doubt, if some of these guys probably all the one box away guys, other than maybe McCaffrey in the bench, and I guess McConkey in the hands, that's pretty significant in Washington. How many of these guys that didn't make the bench would have made it in the one box away category?
Sure. The bench is only needing 10 reps. And so I'm guessing most of these guys would have hit that mark. Dunze, I'm almost positive, would have done at least 10 reps, 225. So, I mean, yeah, I think generally, even if just broadening out for if every prospect did every drill and every testing, you'd have a lot more guys checking boxes. So many of them just miss because almost like most of them don't even do shuttle drills anymore. And that's what half of these guys just at all the positions get knocked on, because they didn't do the short shuttle and or the 3-cone. So the lack of participation is a concern and a now kind of potential issue with the study. And I may have to reapproach things differently in future years.
You said Luke didn't make it because of what?
Luke McCaffrey, he did not bench.
Okay. And what's the cutoff for that?
10. Got to do at least 10 reps on the bench.
Okay. You think he could do 10 on the bench?
Probably. He's got the McCaffrey strength in there, so I bet you could bang out 10.
I assume that is. Here's what I did. I cheated and I did the slanted. You always try to leave as much bias out as possible when it comes to filling in the blanks on some of these missed guys, guys that didn't do certain things. I went through the list of sorting some of these things out here and tried to build an ideal list of wide receivers with assumed boxes checked.
Okay.
Here's the list that I came up with in no particular order. Xavier Legette out of South Carolina, Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky, Roman Wilson out of Michigan, Jalen Polk out of Washington, Devontae Walker out of North Carolina, Jalen McMillan also out of Washington, Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, Luke McCaffrey out of Rice, Javon Baker out of Central Florida, and Jordan Winnington out of Texas. Those are the wide receivers that I came away with hypothetical boxes checked.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a solid list. It's a lot of names that Pittsburgh has shown interest in and had some sort of connection to. I think it'll be a day 2 selection. I'm looking a lot at Roman Wilson.
Now, I did take out. I did eliminate the guys that I thought were going to be gone, though.
Yeah, so no Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, and Odunze. I mean, they would love if Odunze somehow fell, but not going to happen.
I took realistic guys outside of round 1 that I think would have some semblance of chance of being on at least on the board at 51.
Sure. So, yeah, I think it's a good list overall. We'll see if any exceptions. I was looking at Taj Washington from USC. He misses in a ton of categories, height, weight, hand, 40, and didn't do the bench, but he came in for a visit. So that'd be an outlier you do want to watch to see if Pittsburgh were hypothetically to double dip later in the draft. Would that be somebody they would look at in round 6? Who knows? But just wanted to throw that out there. But again, a lot of guys would have probably made it. Brian Thomas didn't make it because he didn't do the shuttles. I'm betting if he had participated and he would have made that pretty easily, stuff like that. So that is a difficulty. The study Roman Wilson, he didn't do the vert or the broad. He would have easily cleared that, the athlete that he is. And so again, some of the unfortunate trends we're seeing are these guys just doing less and less.
All right, so my list is 11, not counting the guys that I think are going to be off the board in round 1. Will the I want to take this. I got 2 questions here. First one is will the Steelers draft one of these 11 I just named off? Legette, Pearsall, Corley, Wilson, Polk, Walker, McMillan, Burton, McCaffrey, Baker, Winnington. Will they draft one of those 11?
Yes.
I agree. Yes. Now that's a long list, but it's not a long list because if these guys had done everything, they're probably those 11 plus the guys in the first round are probably on the list, right?
Most of them, sure.
Okay. I feel confident in saying one of those 11 will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Second, what's next in this process of these guys not doing because it's aggravating. You got to get aggravated doing these now too.
I'm yelling at my screen, just saying, Roman Wilson, just jump. Can we just can I get you in a field and just jump you really quickly? Because I know that you're going to make it, but he didn't do the testing. What
do you foresee as next in this process? Are we at some point going to, with the next gen stats and these guys wearing these things during the combine and their pro day and all like that, at some point that information is going to start becoming available, right? Where you build some sort of next RAS off of stuff that hopefully gets released that way, or will they ever release it? That's got to be the next phase in this thing when it comes to advanced analytics and athletic testing, is how they actually, there will be a score for the cut ability and the speed. You see where I'm going here?
Sure. Well, I think it's already being used behind the scenes.
Sure. We don't have it though.
Sure. I think you're seeing a bit more. Remember at the combine this year, you saw how many times they referenced, the top speed somebody got in a drill or something like that, or how quickly they took them to run the gauntlet. And I think Puka Nacua had the fastest gauntlet time last year. And so they're getting some more kind of advanced analytics on that respect. How quickly will that be made to the, Joe Schmoes out there? I don't know, but I think it's already being used pretty heavily behind the scenes.
But that's the next thing that nerds like us can hope for, right? Because it just and why do you suppose guys aren't completing their profiles now? I know injury has to do with it with several of them. Is some of it just that the agents say, there's not enough time to train to do this properly. They don't want to get hurt. Why are we seeing a decrease in completed pre-draft athletic testing profiles, I guess?
It's a really good question. I don't have a great answer for you. I think the answer would be, is it really hurting these guys? Is Roman Wilson impacted by not doing the broad or the vert? No. So what's the point to really do it then overall? I don't know if it's an injury thing. It's just probably, let's just run a really fast 40, because that's the main event, is run a really fast 40. And if we do that, then everything else kind of takes care of itself. And so there's so much dedication and time to the 40. You may say, let's not even worry about the other stuff, so we can just kind of focus fully on the 40, and we'll let our tape speak for how well people think we can jump and cut and change directions.
And the tape is the master thing in all this. It's all, and over the years you always hear, and it's true, you're just looking at the true numbers to back up what you see on tape, to see if there are any abnormalities there, and if there are, this guy, we thought he'd run faster than 4.44. Well, why did he run 4.54? Is there a reason there? Can we go back to the tape and try to figure that out? Kind of thing there. It's just, for outsiders, it's aggravating.
It is. I'm just inside baseball. I think what I'm going to potentially do for the study next year is, especially for these agility drills that half the field does, I may just take that off as a requirement, because at this point, only like half the Steelers draft picks even have something in that category. And I may have it where if you're an outlier at a really bad number, you may get dinged for that. But if you didn't do it, I may not hold that against you to try to broaden the field, because so many of these guys just are making these boxes and checking it just because they're not doing these drills that you pretty confident that if they had done them, they would have easily, passed that mark.
Well, I think you also get into the aspect here, and I think who's it? Kenley Platt?
Kentley Platt, Math Bomb.
Yeah. I think you've got to get into projecting, because doesn't he do stuff with like projecting?
He projects 10 and 20 splits.
10 and 20s, I think.
But I don't know how to do. I don't know how to do.
You're right. I think somebody's going to have to start mathing the math better, of projections based on other guys that have done the drills. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'd rather eliminate than project, though, because one guy who might, project in a certain way may not apply to the next prospect. So I think that gets into a trickier, grayer area of just kind of guessing at numbers. I'd rather just eliminate the numbers and not consider it at all than try to guess what his time might have been.
Well, needless to say, I've damaging my knuckles quite a bit banging on the table here, because this is something that I really, really over the years have looked forward to, and now we're seeing the list not build out.
Right. But the two who checked the boxes this year for the here and now, Pearsall, so that tracks what Pittsburgh looks for, and on tape his hands are fantastic, and so that's valuable. And then Whittington, again, that third Texas receiver, overshadowed by A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. He's a big slot type. I think he's pretty physical overall, good run after the catch. He's hard to bring down. He's got good ball size. I think there is some quickness to his game in terms of dropping his hips on outbreaking routes, but he really is a intermediate short area game guy, not really a vertical type overall. But I think he's a guy that might be able to help out on special teams, cover kicks and punts and block. Not really as much as a true returner, but I thought Whittington was an interesting guy who I think will get drafted late on day 3.
4th, 5th round guy?
Yeah, I think I put a 6th or 7th round grade on him. Again, just so many receivers bring these guys down. Day 3 really broadens out, and the depth this year isn't fantastic. And so you may see guys kind of go all over the place. I would probably say 5th round on for Whittington.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to address real quickly this morning, I went back the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years to look at how many wide receivers were drafted in the first round and how many wide receivers were drafted by the time pick 51 was on the board.
Okay. Interesting. Wait, have you done homework on that?
I'll just read it off by years. Okay. 6 and 12, 6 last year in the first round, 12 overall by 51.
And that includes the 6 in the first round. When you get to 12, that's 6.
Right.
In the first round, then another 6.
12 in total off the board.
Okay.
By the time 51 was up. 6 and 12, 10 and 14 the year before. 7 and 12, 11 and 16, 3 and 12, 5 and 9, and 5 and 10. So I didn't run them through the averages there, and every year's different. I mean, I don't know what I'm going for as far as trying to prove, other than saying the high side of the last 7 years of wide receivers off the board by the time 51 rolled around was 16. The low side was 9. I have a feeling we're going to see more than 9 off the board by the time 51 rolls around this year. I dare say, in other words, basically, I'm expecting a dozen wide receivers off the board by the time the Steelers pick at 51 overall, assuming they stay put.
Yeah, I think it'll be much closer to 16 than 9. I think it also kind of shows it's mostly concentrated in the first round. They're typically more in the first round taken, but before, I guess it'd be 33 to 51, although it's more picks in the first round too. Yeah, I think at least a dozen go in the top 51, and I think it may challenge that 16 number. Will it get quite there? I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's going to get pretty darn close.
All right, true or false? The wide receiver position is what makes this draft, mocking it out, the most messiest when it comes to trying to plug this. Because look, wide receiver, like it or not, wide receiver's a need on this team in the draft, right?
Sure, it is.
What happens if you don't get one in the first 2 picks? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a great answer for that. There is depth, but again, depth is only so strong. And if 14 names go in the top 51, by the time you pick it 84, you may not have a ton of attractive, immediate playing time type of options there for you. So it's like anything else, though. If you wait on it, then obviously your pool gets slimmer and more projections and guys who may not be day one ready or have some sort of flaw in their game of why they're still there in the third round.
And look, by the third round, you better have had one, right?
By the time you're done with it, yeah. I mean, again, I think day 2. I really think second round is where that receiver will come in as a sweet spot. Where they typically go from, where you're not going to get that top end type of dude, but you're going to get a really good player because of the depth of this class.
All right. Okay. Enough with the wide receiver talk. How about you did the defensive line?
I think you'll be happier with some of the results in box checking for this one. And I didn't change the criteria one bit. Now, this is for defensive ends. This does not include interior kind of nose tackle types. I did not put Benton in this group because he's primarily viewed and was drafted explicitly as a more nose tackle one tech, and if he can kick out. So, but just to be clear on that, I didn't include Benton in this year's in this year's group of criteria, which means the criteria did not change at all. But 4 players checked every single box, and they're going to be some familiar sounding names to those who follow the Steelers pre-draft process. And Logan Lee from Iowa, Rook, a row. We agreed it's right. It's a row from Clemson, Mason Smith from LSU, and Darius Robinson from Missouri, all 4 checking every single box. 3 of those 4 have come in for visits, and Lee and Smith and Robinson. And we know a row is a guy that certainly seems to fit what Pittsburgh is looking for.
That makes me feel better from a bias standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we can tell, we can sense when it comes to defensive ends what that Steelers type looks like, ideally.
Right. Now back to the over under, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't mean everything, obviously. But Darius, what was one of the first things we were discussing early on in this process? Darius Robinson was one
of the first name we talked about.
Right. I mean, that was one of the guys that I went deep dive. Him and I think Logan Lee were two defensive linemen that I could not, when looking at the initial measurements, couldn't wait to go jump in the tape on. Darius Robinson over under 29.5. So even if he was to slip, how far does he slip, and where would you need to take him if indeed? And look, I had problems right after I watched the tape, thinking a little light in the box for ideally what the Steelers look for. As this process has gone on, I've kind of wondered, is this guy going to end up being a rush, more of a rush in for a team, because he's got that bend. I mean, he is, and I'm not taking anything away from him. It's just he's more than what I thought he was. He was more of what I thought he would be in certain aspects of his game, and less of what I thought he would be when it comes to what the Steelers might ask him to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I could just go back to, again, he was kind of out of place maybe last year.
He's very tweenerish, very tweenerish.
Yeah, but again, they kind of made him that way because they had him drop weight and play more DN last year when he was a D tackle the years prior. So I think if you maybe look back at, and I need to do it too, more of his 2022 tape to kind of maybe get a better representation of how he would look in Pittsburgh, playing a bit more interior and just kind of playing at a heavier weight overall. It's interesting because he is one of the 13 going to the draft. And, I think the NFL is trying to not have a ton of players go to the draft, and the guys they invite, they are hearing, and you would assume that they think they're going to go relatively early. And so for his over-under to be at 29.5, and yet for him to be going to the draft, we'll see kind of which shakes out. Is he going to be a first-round pick or not?
Here's the thing with him. I think I think his tape and what he's done through the process and all, after watching his tape, I was not slam dunk. This is a first round guy, but I think for what he is and what he's shown that he is, and what the tape, is showing he is, and what obviously the betting community and the draft community as a whole thinks. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be surprising if he falls out of the first round. He's not going to fall very far out of it. Doesn't feel like. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I'll be surprised if he'll be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be a Steeler either. I think that would require, taking him in the first round. I don't think that's the team's overall intent. I don't think he'll be there at 51 either. So yeah, unlikely, but at least it's good to see him match, given that he was brought in for a visit. That's good validation.
All right, now Logan Lee is kind of on the other side of that. I view him as a little light in the pants. Man, I just and how he was used, and in the rotation that he was used, I think he's a good prospect, but I don't view him as a top 4 round guy. I think he is a mid to later day 3 guy.
Right. That's the projection on him. Later day 3, a little Loudermilk like, where he's tall, a little bit light, lacking length, can bat down passes. Probably a bit better prospect, I think, overall than Loudermilk coming out, but they're cut from similar cloths.
I think if he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, it's because you might even be doubling up on the position for whatever reason, and you're getting him as an extreme slip guy later in the draft. I really wanted him to fit everything out of the box when it came to his weight and the way he played and all like that, but that didn't end up happening. But basically with him too, I will be a bit surprised if he's a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Okay. I mean, once you get into late day 3, who knows? What if they don't draft a defensive lineman early?
Sure.
They can't draft everything that they would like to draft with their current capital. So something will have to give. Could that be D-line and Leisure to Lee in round 6? Potentially.
And look, I mean, is there a place in the NFL for a guy like Logan Lee? Yes.
Yeah. And if Pittsburgh, if they're if they care a little less about the length aspect of it, then maybe Lee could be an option late rounds.
All right. Now for the other 2 in here.
And that's a Rowe and Smith. And those are just kind of classic Steelers DNs. Smith especially. I think a Rowe is the better prospect, more refined, more out of the box ready. Smith is going to take some more time to develop and refine his game, his technique. He had that 2022 ACL tear, wasn't super productive in 2023, but coming off the knee injury, could he look even better in 2024, 2 years removed from that? You kind of get rotational snaps behind Cam and Ogunjobi year 1, and then hopefully he's ready to be a starter in 2025. That's kind of the long and short of my thoughts on Mason Smith.
All right. Those are 2 guys that it didn't take long for us to whittle down throughout this process of what's that meme? Steeler.
Oh yeah. The Squidward meme.
Yeah, the Squidward meme.
You have a good half knowledge of memes, enough for me to understand it, but not enough to fully describe it initially. So we'll get there.
What's up, brother?
I don't even know what that is. Anyone know what that? You know what that is?
I cheated. I cheated.
What is it?
It's what's this guy's sketch or?
Okay.
I've already forgotten his name, but evidently some kid has made a name for himself on TikTok, big Madden player, and has these expressions and all like that. And it's really caught on with not just football athletes, but baseball. You see these baseball players I went way down too many rabbit holes.
What were you doing last night?
I'm trying to keep up with the fellow kids, man. I'm 56 now, man. I got. It's a chore trying to keep up with these trends and internet and be cool with the kids. I'm trying.
Well, all right, you're doing better than me, I guess.
But anyway, back to these two. These two have seemed like Steelers for a little while now. If they draft a defensive lineman, second to fourth round, it really feels like it's going to be one of these two in a Rowe or Mason Smith.
Yeah, I think with Rook, it's going to be more, you got to do it at 51. Mason Smith, maybe more of an option, I think, at 84.
What about the one box away guys?
Yeah, there's a ton of them. And I did include all defensive linemen, even the ones that are projected to be more true interior guys. And so I just did that to be as expansive as possible. So, for example, if Fabian Lovett, is a plugger, one tech, he's not going to be a true DM, but I put him on the list just to put him on the list. Byron Murphy is not going to play traditional DN at 6 foot. And same with Wingo from LSU. But I think some of the names that make sense, we got Jason Crumedy, who was brought in for a visit. He missed in bench, only did 14 reps on the bench press. Gabe Hall would have made it, but he did not bench.
That's a guy that I highlighted early around Senior Bowl. Yeah,
we've talked about him a lot earlier in the process. Keith Randolph from Illinois, I think is a sleeper name that gets overshadowed by his teammate, Johnny Newton. I think Tom is a decent fan of Eric Watts from UConn, who's a bit lighter, but has the frame, I think, to add that weight. And I hadn't done a deep dive on his game, but no one talks about Brandon Dorless from Oregon. He's probably going to be a top 60, overall selection, and he really fits well. He's a good player.
What's the height on him?
He's tall. He made the height
requirement. Tonight.
He made the height requirement. I think he's a little bit lighter. He didn't make it because of he didn't was it bench? Yeah, he didn't bench like so many of the other guys. He is 6. Okay, a little bit. No, is he only 6'3"? I'll have to double check that. He might have. Maybe he's not supposed to be one box away. I'll have to double check that. But I think it's a sleeper prospect still all the same.
He at the combine evidently was 6'3", even 283.
Okay, then I may have an error on that on him. Trying to get all this data together because he would have missed then the height requirement too. But still a guy that probably going to be a second round pick that nobody ever talks about, just generally.
Okay, of the guys in the one in the one box away category, give me 2 that you could see being Steelers.
I mean, easy one is Crumedy because they brought him in for a visit, and then I'll say just another easy answer in Gabe Hall if you want that. He's like Mason Smith essentially. Gabe Hall, size, unrefined, developmental type of guys, and Hall maybe you can get a little bit later than a Mason Smith.
All right, I would agree with you on those 2.
But I think the D-line certainly fits overall. I'm glad there were some notable names, and they kind of matched up with what Pittsburgh's pre-draft interest has shown to be.
All right, I like it. All right, got. At least we have guys. Those 4 that made it are guys that we've talked off and on about quite a bit throughout this process.
Yeah, for sure. Next up will be inside linebacker, which has already been completed. Not a ton of guys checking every single box, unfortunately, there. And then I will do interior offensive line next, and we'll see how Powers Johnson and Frazier, and we'll put Barton in there too, and how they stack up.
All right. I look forward to that.
Let me ask you a question, Dave. I had an article yesterday, and it's truly open-ended. This is not a leading question at all.
I'm not.
Oh, no.
Okay.
You're fine. Can the Steelers make a bad first-round pick, just strictly in a vacuum, without considering what they do rounds 2 through 7? Is there a name or even a position where you sit there and say you're not going to be happy with that?
Let's see here.
Because I think they have so many needs.
If you look at any top 50 list of names across the landscape and took the majority that showed up in that top 50, because you'll have some people that don't have some guys in that top 50, but I would like to think that you'd come away with a good 35 names that would have some commonality in them across the landscape of the Bruglers or the Kuipers or who else, if you were to do that, I think if you were to eliminate quarterback, if you were to eliminate off the ball linebacker, tight end, what else could you eliminate? I think that would probably be it, right?
Yeah, running back. I mean, back. Obviously, in terms of, obviously, it took a running back to be a bad pick, but I say that from the sense of the guys that they've shown interest in, even the list of a dozen names, it could be the pick. Are there any one? There are some that would be quote unquote better than others, of course, but I just wonder, is there a pick where it just feels like that was a bad pick? I wonder if that, I struggle to see that one name that you sit there and say, oh man, that is a bad pick.
Loosely, and once again, I have qualified it, right, by removing some positions there, but those are obvious qualifiers there. To me, from what I know, the answer is no.
That's what I'm thinking too. Now, again, you can debate whoever they pick. They should have taken this guy instead, but that's not what I'm looking for just in a vacuum to the player. And in some ways, because they have so many needs, there are so many areas they could address. Even if they don't go offensive tackle or center, they could still get a guy that's talented and can help them win right away. So there, of course, will be debates about, they take a Graham Barton. Is he ready? Is he a projection? But the long and short of it is, I think we'll come away with a first round pick, regardless of who it is, and say, okay, we can see how that guy makes sense and how he fits and how he helps.
I would agree. But I mean, in a vacuum, couldn't you do this in a year?
That's also true. I mean, I think we always, kind of talk just very broadly, talking sports fans in general, try to talk ourselves into the pick. But I mean, Jarvis Jones, I think maybe less so at the time, but I don't think you love the Jarvis Jones pick whenever they turn the card on him, right?
No, I did not. I was way back when I was walking to school uphill both ways in the snow. Looked at all his TV sacks, and I remember really, really wondering about him. Then remember Dave T, what he said about he was a guy that always just showed up around a pile. Kind of guy. And then I had deep dived Artie Burns, I think, before the draft, and wondered why are people talking about him as a first rounder. So I definitely had my questions about that. But in the flip side, I mean, I've had my guys, and I constantly bring up the Kansas City Chris Jones as guys that I didn't see it on tape that ended up being just absolutely fantastic NFLers, players.
But there are examples. Even Terrell Edmonds was a surprise.
And look, Devin Bush. I mean, one of our all-time classic conversations on this podcast when it comes to pre-draft was about Devin Bush. And I wondered, where is that true production with him?
Sure. So to answer your question, I think, yes, there's been multiple examples of you personally being unhappy with a first round pick. So it's not every year that we sit there and say we love this first round pick.
Right. So what you're getting at is inserting my qualifiers in there. Does it feel like they can make a bad first round pick? Now, look, are you going to get a consensus? I mean, everybody,
No.
whoever they end up picking, there's going to be, at least 40% of the people says, oh, they should have either went that way, or these are the holes in this kid.
Sure. My point is just to say that I think it'd be very hard for them to totally botch the pick. Of course, you can always debate, you should have taken this guy or this position over who they actually selected. But unless they do something just radical or crazy or something completely unforeseen. I think they're going to get a good player. So my point is not really a
what if they take
one.
Fautanu and call him a center?
That would be, yeah, that's one way you sit there and go, even if they just take Fautanu in general, like my question will be a little bit on, where do you want to play and what's your plan for him? I'd be very curious to hear, and obviously we'll get to hear them, Khan and Tomlin speak.
What if they take Nate Wiggins?
I wouldn't hate that. I mean, again, you can debate, is there better players to take, but I think he's a really high-end cover corner. And if he becomes a guy and you have Porter and Wiggins on the outside for the next 5+ years, I'm really happy with that.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I the short answer to the question that you posed to me is yes.
Yeah, in the sense of there's no bad pick they could probably make.
Right.
Yeah. Now, again, obviously, if you look at a draft in totality and say, okay, they don't take a center in the first round, they don't take one until the 4th round, you can criticize that. And maybe in hindsight, say they should have taken a first-round guy. But just to the prospect, the guys that are kind of on our list, I don't see a lot of names that I would hate or really dislike for them to take. Fautanu would be one where I would really question the fit in the role. I was watching some of Fuaga the other day. I just wonder if he's long enough, and I wonder how much that's going to hurt him on the edges. He's really active with his hands and his feet. He's a good athlete overall. Just don't think he has necessarily the size that Pittsburgh has been typically gravitating towards when it comes to their tackles. Wouldn't hate that, but that's one where I kind of would start to – I would have some concerns, at least with Fuaga.
I agree.
All right, Dave, that's all I got in terms of things that I wanted to talk about today. Anything else you wanted to share or address?
No, I think, what's the big takeaway, the big news today for this show is Graham Barton coming in for a visit. That's the largest takeaway, I think, for this show. Yeah, that is certainly big. We'll see if they bring in, they could bring in 2 more today, and if they're not names already known or reported, and that should be your 30, and we can kind of get some finality to that list and really take a nice long look at their official 30. So either way, we should basically know almost, if not all, of their 30, which I know we were kind of unsure if that would happen a couple weeks ago. So I'm happy about that as well. I am very happy about that as well. Okay. All right, just a reminder before we get to emails and close out today's show, I'll have my live second and final Walk the Mock live stream tomorrow, Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I will do at least the first 3 rounds. I'll try to do 4. I think it's technically set up for all 7 rounds. I don't think I'll make it to do round 6 for the Steelers, but we'll have that on my YouTube channel tomorrow. Now, who's all, is that computer generated and you or what? It may be a mix of both. It's not the official sponsored one by the owners of the site, creators of the site. This is just a lobby where I'm just in with random people, and I don't know how many other people have signed up for teams right now. So it'll hopefully be mostly, human, but it'll just be a bunch of random people, and who knows how this thing could actually shake out. All right, shall we go to the email machine? Yep, let's get to the emails and close out today's show. All right, we'll start off with Marcus Perkner from, where is he from here? Austria. How about that? Nice. I know draft talk is all about hypotheticals, but I really think the Steelers have to go and get big bodies at the O-line and D-line. I get that we're short at wide receiver talk, but we're not short at pass catchers if you include the tight end room. That's why I think it's not that big of a need, especially if they live in 13 or 22 personnel with the Arthur Smith system. He says, I would love to see them take 5 guys around 300 pounds and load up into trenches and get a free agent wide receiver for now and take one in next year's draft. That's understandable. Look, I think you're going to see some big bodies in the first 4 rounds of this draft to help ease your wants there, Marcus. But nobody understands the more potential 13, 22 personnel potential of this, or what we think when it comes to Arthur Smith. But this team needs another wide receiver in the first 3 picks, feels like. Yeah, they need both, and they can do both, and they can get bigger and have bulk up front and still have another receiver in there. But yeah, you got to have this passing game be more than mediocre at best. Over the last 2 years, and even mediocre is probably being too generous. You don't want to have that regret of, if we just had another weapon for these quarterbacks, our offense could be better. Got to get a passing game that at least feels baseline level, feels normal to the NFL. Hopefully better than that, but at least at that kind of normal throw 25 touchdowns type of range. And
what happens? You lose George Pickens. I mean, you're definitely really be strained at that point.
All right, Bryce writes in, Steeler fans better prepare themselves for the likelihood that your 2024 opening day starter is Mason Cole. He says, I see him back on a 1-year low-value deal to fill the gaping hole at center, and when that happens, I throw my laptop into the flat screen, he says. Could you see a world where this happens? Look, here's the thing. If Mason Cole does come back, it's going to be on a super cheap 1-year deal. And to me, it feels like that would happen after the draft. This team's drafting a center. I don't care where they draft one. They're drafting a center that they hope can be a week 1 starter. And the only way that Mason Cole starts week 1 would be an injury or them just misevaluating the potential of whoever they draft at center, making it fully as a day 1 plug and play guy.
Yeah, I mean, is there a world? What happens though if they don't get one of the top 3 centers and they draft one in the 3rd, 4th round? What does a center outlook look like from there?
You better bring in somebody to either that or we'll find out what they really think about Herbig.
Yeah, I mean, you say they bring in somebody, but who? I mean, who else would you bring in?
Well, the veteran, the Miami guy that's battling back from injury,
Right. But that's, I think, his point is if you go that route, then do you bring back a Mason Cole because he's a veteran guy who been around your team?
I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible that Mason Cole does not return in some way, shape, or form. But I mean, you weren't on the hook for a ton of money when you let him go. Obviously, you did save a little bit of money with the guaranteed roster bonus there. And if you thought the outlook, and yeah, but my contention is if they thought Mason Cole was savable, guaranteed money aside, he would still be on this roster right now.
I get that, and I'm not advocating. I'm not even sure the reader is to bring him back. I think you're obviously in a really bad spot if that's the situation, which I think creates the urgency all the more to get a center and get one sooner than later. But I do wonder what it'll look like if they have to go to the emergency plan and they take Norzad or whatever center in the 3rd, 4th round, and it's messy. That's for sure.
Yeah, let's hope we don't get to that. Second part is, with this possibly being Cam Hayward's final season, should the Steelers consider going back to more of a 2-gap scheme until they find their next stud defensive ends? He asked because with Queen, the inside linebacker will be getting new pieces, and it might allow them to remain more free to run and make plays. Look, you're still going to have some 2-gap aspect during a game. Just how much? I mean, in today's league, has gone to more penetrate now with one gap. There's not a lot of guys in today's NFL world that aren't better 1-gappers than they are 2-gappers. Does that make sense?
I mean, there's going to be a mix, and so there'll be times where Queen can be freed up, but you have a guy like Hayward that can make plays. So I'm not concerned about that. They mix things up and they have run stunts, and not to me really a big sticking point.
Yeah, me either. Luke Weaver writes in, David Knox, I love what the Steelers look for articles, but it seems more and more it just matches up to late round prospects, and those are the guys more likely to do every drill. The top prospects skip some or all of the drills. How big of a list would you end up with if you included everyone who met the criteria on the tests they performed? Do you think analytics in general are to blame for these guys skipping drills, or if it's the RAS score specifically? Can't say I blame them, though. These guys all practice the drills and know roughly what they'll score. They can plug their numbers into the RAS calculator and see which drills improve their score and which ones drag it down if you're already projected to get drafted. Why do a drill that will drop your RAS score, right? He says, I just think that, Luke, this is just an overall look at what Alex and I talked about earlier. So, these kids have such busy off seasons now. They want to train. they obviously, if they're going to do things at the combine, they want to train for the 40. And they just feel that it's not a need. They feel just look at the tape, especially if they are early round guys and you don't know what nagging injuries they have. I just think it's a byproduct of time and knowing that they really don't have to do all these things unless they are these day 3 guys, and they really want to show that, man, my short shuttles, I'm going to surprise you guys with this short shuttle. I'm going to train my butt off at my short shuttle and put up a number that looks maybe a little bit better than what my tape shows. Does that make sense?
It does. And I appreciate the guys that do it all and just from a competitive level and just say, I want to compete. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to give you guys as much information as possible. And every challenge, every drill that I'm asked and could do, I'm going to do. So I do respect that. It's a fair point. I still think in terms of the guys that really don't do much of anything, that's still reserved for like the top blue chip prospects. And we'll probably see more and more of that, Marvin Harrison Jr. doing nothing in this pre-draft process and not, just focusing on football drills. But our list so far has kind of been half and half. Look at the offensive linemen. It's Alt, Blake Fisher, and Frank Crum. Alt's going to be the first tackle off the board. Fisher's going to be a probably top 100 pick, and Crum is a late round guy. The receivers, Pearsall is going to be a top 50 guy. Whittington's late round guy. That split. Defensive line, Robinson, a potential first round guy. Rowe, and Smith are going to be day 2 guys, and then Lee a day 3 guy. So I think it's kind of been split 50-50 overall. In terms of, do you include everybody that just hits the criteria of what they tested in? It's an idea, but what if a guy just runs the 40 and that's it, and he meets that bar? Does he go on the list? That seems to be stretching it too much. So again, I'll have to kind of examine how I want to approach things. I may take off some of the agility drills, not include them in our benchmarks for, positions where it's less relevant, where there's not really much of a high time for it, and something like that.
All right. Brian Tellini writes in, let's talk round 2, wide receiver, defensive line, and cornerback are the positions I have focused on. There seem to be so many names that fit this team in the 50 to 70 range. Here's what I believe to be true at this pick, and I want to see you agree, disagree. If we want a defensive lineman like Rook, Rowe or Mason Smith, we better take them at 51. We know the difficulty of finding guys this size. Number 2, if we want slot cornerbacks, Mike Sanderstill, Max Melton, or Andrew Phillips, we better take them at 51. As a guide, Brugler has all these names in his top 64, he says. If we go wide receiver at 51, we will miss out on all these names mentioned and the best fits at 2 positions. After the draft is over, which position group are we going to be talking about as getting the short end of the stick? Look, I mean, you make fair points, and this, we talked about this the other day in the live stream. This year, I'm really trying my best to get 12 pounds in a 5-pound bag. And I mean, Brian, you're right. I mean, if you look at those positions specifically, wide receiver, defensive line, and cornerback, and assuming that you don't take one of those positions in the first round, and you look at guys that presumably check the boxes, it is tough. But I will tell you this: inevitably, as perfect of a world as we like to think, the Dane Bruglers and the Mel Kuypers and all, somebody falls. We were looking this morning at Mike Sanderstill. I had Ross pull up 5'8.5", or what was it?
I think 5094. I think was your
509. Yeah, and guys that have been drafted and where those guys have gone. Could his size end up being? And look, there's been a lot of buzz about the Max Meltons and the Andrew Phillips, that those guys are too low. You look at Mason Smith specifically. I don't disagree with the Rowe. If you don't get him at 51. But I think there's a decent chance that a Mason Smith falls into the 3rd round because of the inexperience and the specific body size. Not everybody's looking for that kind of body size in their defense.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you said, guys fall, and we say this every year that he won't be there. I mean, I understand and agree with some of that, and some of those guys won't be there. But a top list of your top 70 prospects does not always reflect how the draft works. The draft is also based off of team need and value and depth of classes. And it's not just a straight, okay, here are the best players. They're going to go in very close order to their actual grade. Runs at positions can create needs and cause guys to fall, positional value. So there's a lot of factors to go into where guys get drafted. And then you even factor in medical and character and how teams view those things differently as well. That can have guys all over the map. So again, I think the list is important and the grades are important, but just somebody's even as respected and as smart as Dane Brugler, his top 64 does not, and he probably would admit this too, does not always reflect how the draft functions in terms of how teams view players, how they get drafted.
Right. I mean, you got 13 kind of specific positions, and teams have different needs, and that forces a certain position group to be a little heavier. I get Brian's main takeaway here, and what I view his main takeaway is if you're an outsider like us trying to build the perfect Pittsburgh Steelers draft, it does get messy, specifically when it comes to maybe these three positions and second to third round.
Yeah, there is no perfect draft based off their current capital because some position's going to be out in the cold. And the question is, what position, the reader had mentioned this, what position do you think gets the short end of the stick?
And once again, what are we missing as far as guys we haven't talked a lot about that maybe check a few of these boxes that maybe have not been brought in for pre-draft? They are going to draft a guy not on that pre-draft visitor list, correct?
Yeah, it'll be more than one. There'll be multiple.
Right. And it will be more than likely, it will be guys that we've had not focused talks on in this podcast, but passing comments on.
Sure. We look at the inside linebackers. None of those guys besides Wilson came in for a visit, but we've talked a lot about Wallace and Gray and Eichenberg, right. And one of those guys could be the pick. You look at positional coaches on day 2, and there's a lot of correlation between where the positional coaches go and who becomes a day 2 pick. But to ask and answer the question, what position do you think does not get taken in the top 4 picks, top 3 rounds? If you had to guess. And it's tough to do because you don't know how the board looks and you don't know all the other factors. But if you
I said this the other day on the live stream. I asked the listeners, there's 5 positions overall that you could foreseeably, or at least that I perceive the first 4 picks could come out of. That would be tackle, center, corner, defensive line, wide receiver, and I'm not no specific order there, but
right.
If that is true, and you stay pat with your 4 picks, where top 4 picks where they are, one position's has got to slide, right?
Right, and the question is, what position do you think that'll be?
I feel it would be defensive line or corner.
You got to pick one. I'm gonna make you pick one. I'll go corner.
I'll go defensive line.
Okay. Fair enough. I think at corner, they could sit there and say, we got Dante Jackson, and we can go re-sign Patrick Peterson, post-draft, to play in the slot.
All right. Paul Brown says, David Knox, not a specific Steelers question, but I've always wondered why running backs drop off in production so quickly once they move teams. There are so many recent examples of where the productivity was still high at an advanced stage, yet they moved to teams, their careers fell off. Steven Jackson, he lists, Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley. Just a couple of examples. I think it's worth discussing in running back rooms why running backs shouldn't be rushing themselves out of a good situation, because more often than not, it'll be a career-ending decision. Paul, I respect the question there, and I at first blush, I don't have a great answer to you other than running backs as they get older and they get more wear and tear. And a guy like Steven Jackson had injuries, and Melvin have some sort of injury with Denver, and obviously Le'Veon Bell. Gurley obviously had an injury and all like that.
Arthritis. He had the arthritis, right?
Right. I think it's wear and tear, age. I think just looking at these 4 names specifically, that's what I would point to. But on top of that I got to admit, that's not even where my focus is right now. I think maybe this is something, Paul, if you want to maybe bring this up later on in the offseason after we get after past the job, I'll tell you this, I'm not going to deep dive this based off this question. I understand the premise of the question. I think it's a fair one. I think he gives great examples here. But I don't have a great answer other than what I just said: wear and tear, age, and medical. Outside of that,
yeah, no, I think you're right, Dave. I just think it's the wear and tear of the position that we've seen time and time again.
Bill Adams writes in, enjoyed the discussion on the centers. One thing not mentioned is that I think Miami picking before the Cowboys. But after Pittsburgh, I have heard is desperate for interior offensive line talent, and I would think they could pick Barton or Powers Johnson even before the Cowboys. That just gives more evidence to the notion that the Steelers will have to trade up in round 2 to get a center if one is still there by then. Love the show. Been a listener for a while. Alex, definitely awesome. In-depth insight into podcast. Bill, if you deep dive Miami and you think that they're a team that could potentially address interior offensive line, albeit they pick after the Steelers, then yeah, that adds to the. If you truly believe that, and once again, that list of 4 teams that I built out was just my take on it. There could obviously, and Alex keeps going back to the Bengals and wondering if they're going to address a guy like Barton, maybe to play guard or even center there. So you could go team by team on the teams that did not make the Final Four and probably make some good arguments for some of those to draft an interior guy. I will still stand by that at this point in the pre-draft process now. My contention is, my belief is, and we'll see if I'm wrong, that the Steelers should have their choice of centers at 20th overall.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they're going to have at least 2 of the 3, if not all 3, which I think is certainly possible. I know Miami signed Aaron Brewer over from Tennessee to replace Liam Eichenberg, who has been. I was thinking about Eichenberg as a potential, trade option, but I think he has not played well at center in Miami based on what I read from some Dolphins fans on the internet. But they signed Brewer, and so maybe they need a guard. I don't know entirely their guard situation, but they did get a free agent ad in the offseason.
All right. From Lance from North Carolina, question for the podcast today. Who would you like the Steelers to draft in the first round, and why? I feel like there's been a lot of mock drafts about who you think the Steelers will pick, but curious who each one of you would like the Steelers to draft in the first round and why. And I think Amarius Mims is one that leads my list of, boy, I sure would like to see that guy in the Steelers uniform. I do wonder at this point with some of these maybe guys listed at tackles, if they're going to be included, if they're more viewed as interior guys, what does that do to the tackle list there? I do admit, though, that Mims might take some watering and developing in the process, but you do have the whole planet theory and the tape that's out there. I think he is one that would kind of be at the top of my list of guys that I think could potentially be there, of who I would like maybe this team to draft.
Yeah, I think Mims is up there for me. Again, there is risk and projection. I'll have an article on this, I think, sometime next couple of days, because we do get asked a lot about who we would like to draft if we were GM. We usually go from the mindset of what we think they will do, because I think that's more relevant. But I've been leaning back towards Barton. I know there's a projection there, but he's got the size. He's got the football IQ, which is really important to play center. There is some experience there, so I get there is a level of projection. But of course, there'd be one with Mims, even keeping him at right tackle as well. So I'd probably go between one of those 2 guys, Barton or Mims.
Yeah, and what's the worst case scenario with Barton if he does not work out at center?
Hold on one second. We got some visits coming in. I want to double check this, see if there's new names on this list. We have 3 of them, which is interesting. I'm not sure how the numbers work on that. Travis Clayton from England. He is from the International Pathway Program. I had written about him a couple weeks ago. He's one of the 18 guys who were part of the IPP program. Pittsburgh had a scout at the South Florida Pro Day. It was South or Central Florida, I think South Florida Pro Day. And so he's a big guy who is part of the American Academy over there. Hunter Norzad from Penn State, the offensive lineman. We talked about him a little bit, playing center guard, former Cornell player, transferred to Penn State, and Junior Colson, the inside linebacker from Michigan. So I'm not sure where that are any of these local visits, because I'm not sure how the math is mathing.
Well, I mean, where's Colson from? Hometown? He's not from.
Yeah, I doubt it. I can double check here real quick, hopefully. But that means, because we were at 28 known or reported, Colson is from Haiti, so it's not local. And I assume Clayton's from the UK. I don't know Norzad's roots, but maybe one of those names then did not come in for a visit. Could it be McConkey? I don't know. But putting all that kind of details aside, does Clayton count as a visit?
Hunter Norzad's from Marietta, Georgia.
All right, so also not local. Interesting. So Clayton, Norzad, and Colson. I don't know where that leaves our list, but looking at the prospects themselves, you got I think could Norzad be a third round pick, late third round pick? I don't rule that out. Colson, so 2 off-ball linebackers have come in, and then Clayton, a developmental type.
Colson, obviously Tomlin and Kahn and Terrell Austin were all at that Michigan Pro Day. At one point, there's a still shot of Mike Tomlin talking to Colson. So take that for whatever it's worth there. Obviously, one of the top off-the-ball linebackers in this year's class. So that's a little notable there, I think, when it comes to him. Norzad is a break glass in case of emergency, it feels like. If you don't get a center and you need to get one in the middle rounds, he becomes a prime candidate, it feels like, for that. And then the pathway guy is just, you want to learn a lot about him, probably.
I wonder if the IPP guys count against your 30. I don't have any details on that, if they actually do, or maybe that's an exception, a carve out type of thing. I'm just kind of speculating of how that is. But obviously it sounds like then Michael Penix has not come in for a visit, I assume then.
And then what about Joey Porter Jr.'s cousin?
I would assume that none of those 3 officially came in, because I just know the way the math can work otherwise. So I assume that Sean Stevens, Dylan Johnson, and Michael Penix, who were all reported, I think Stevens himself said he believed he had a visit, did not occur.
And what about Dylan Johnson was the other one in there, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna take those guys off the list then, because there's no way that all those guys could have come in, and today's visitors have come in as well. Something's not right there. Some stuff on Clayton again. I'd written about him a couple weeks ago. He's listed at 6'7", 301, 35-inch arms. He ran a 4.79 40 at his pro day workout, which again was looking like South Florida. There's mentions about him being a former boxer. Tom Pelissero had said this too. I could not find any verification on that besides one article that briefly mentioned it. I know he played tennis as a kid growing up, which is not probably relevant to much of anything, but I found that. He's about 22 years old as well, Travis Clayton. So some information there on him.
And we'll see. I mean, what is the no? And here's the other thing. Wasn't Ray Fittipaldo the only one to report Mims?
Yes, to my knowledge.
All right. We're counting him. Let's assume he did indeed come in. What is the list set at of guys that we know have been in?
Counting Mims and counting the others that were also reported to have come in, but we don't have dates on that.
No, not counting Penix or Johnson.
No. I'm talking about Lad McConkey and Darius Robinson. We don't know when they came in. The reports are they did come in though.
Right. Go ahead and count those guys.
Okay, then we'd be at 31. Taking out Penix, Johnson, and Stevens, and including Clayton, Norzad, and Colson.
Okay, good. Tomorrow's going to be tomorrow's going to be an interesting day if they bring in.
Okay. I don't even know how that would work. I think they're done at this point. My guess is either one of those guys didn't come in, or Clayton does not count against your 30 because of some sort of international IPP. I don't know. Is what I'm getting at.
Real quick, looking at this list, we didn't mention in the boxes checked Christian Boyd.
Yeah. Well, he was on a combine guy, right?
Okay.
I only counted the combine guys, but I've gotten some questions about that. And I think he's more interior than DN because he's 6'2" with like 31.5-inch arms or something, but he missed on height, length. He had a terrible workout, maybe because of the injury, didn't get to train, but he missed in height, weight, vert, short shuttle, 3-cone. Like he missed in a bunch of stuff.
All right. Okay. We're closing in on the 2-hour mark. We got through a lot of emails. Let me see maybe if there's one more email here. Chris Warren, Notre Dame guys. I've seen a few mock drafts that have either Blake Fisher or Cam Hart being mocked to the Steelers. As a fan of the Fighting Irish, I feel the need to pass along something to you and your listeners. Buyer beware, he says. Blake Fisher was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school where he was twice as big as any other player on the field. The problem with Fisher is that he's very slow and has poor lateral movement, and he really didn't get any better during his time at Notre Dame. Cam Hart is a great dude and team captain. However, he has had 3+ surgeries on his shoulder. The shoulder problems were so bad that at one point, I remember several analysts commenting that they expected that Cam might quit the game rather than returning to the team. He says, I love the person and I love the game, but those shoulders are part of the package, he says. Are we going to have, who's our Notre Dame guy? Ryan.
Notre Dame guy?
Ryan.
Ryan Roberts?
Yeah, Ryan Roberts. Is he going to be part of the round table?
Yes, he'll be there.
Okay, so he follows Notre Dame, so we'll pin him down on some of these Notre Dame guys.
Yeah, that's good information. Appreciate that. Yeah, I wasn't super high on Fisher's tape overall. I think he's pretty young. He's still 20 years old.
He declared early. He's an early declarer too, right?
Yeah, one of those 54s. So I think he's developmental. I compared him to Dan Moore, which I know is a curse word for many people. I didn't take it as negatively, but there's some work and refinement I think needed with Blake Fisher.
Okay. All right. Through the questions here, and we're running a little bit long. You got anything else for us? At least we got the pre-draft visit. We ran long enough to get the pre-draft visitors in there.
Yeah, that was us stretching for that to happen. So no, we'll come back on Friday. Yeah.
Friday. All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button and follow the directions. That way, we will be back on Friday. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.